We got 7 different stories from several different media outlets. It's time for another episode of the World Newsround. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Reganelite here with another episode of the World Newsround. The date and time of this recording is the 7th of May 2024 at just gone 10 past 5 a.m. and where we cover several different stories from outside of the United Kingdom. And we start with this one from the Association Press. With Trump faces jail threat over the gag order as prosecutors zero in on transactions at the heart of this case. So I was waiting for the morning to see one of the latest, obviously, stories from the Trump trials. The clock that it's getting a little bit closer and closer each passing day as the trials continue to proceed. I have been trying to keep up to date with it as much as I possibly can, but it's not looking good at the moment. But the real question is what's the punishment going to be when it's all said and done, if he's found guilty, obviously, because the jury I do feel like the jury have a lot of weight on their shoulders because they're fully aware of the pressures that are on them because of what's happening. But I also, and it is a difficult one. I know they're trying to be, it's a very difficult situation for them because obviously any of them could be targeted, hounded, or whatever by this. And I'm actually glad that it's not like live streamed or whatever, because then it would just be a massive circus for Trump and his politicalization. But there are obviously plenty of YouTubers and journalists and whatnot covering what's been happening with it. And he's been violating he's violated his gag order about 10 times, and yet he still has, and he's been hit with a few fines, but he still hasn't gone to jail. And I think I generally believe this, guys. This has been if he wasn't a former president, if he was anybody else, he'd be in jail, throughout this period of this trial. But because I generally believe that it's because of the influence that he has, because of the followers that are behind him, and the threat of him, of what the repercussions are, is why I generally believe why he hasn't been put there. But we will have to wait and see how things go, guys. So let's dive into it. So Donald Trump returns to his hush money trial on Tuesday, facing a threat of jail time for additional gag order violations as prosecutors gear up to summon big-name witnesses in the final weeks of the case. Stormy Daniels, the porn star actor who said she had sexual encounters with Trump, and Michael Cohen, the former Trump lawyer and personal fixer, who prosecutors say paid her to keep silent in the final weeks of the 2016 presidential campaign, among those who have yet to take the stand or are expected to in the coming weeks. So obviously, Stormy Daniels and Michael Cohen, obviously, they're going to be very, very big ones, that's for sure. Stormy Daniels, obviously, the one who's the storm around all this as well. That will be very fascinating to see when they do take the stand. The jury on Monday heard from 2 witnesses, including a former Trump Organization controller, who provided a mechanical but vital recreation of how the company reimburses payments that were allegedly meant to suppress embarrassing stories from surfacing, and then lodged them as legal expenses in the manner that Manhattan prosecutors say broke the law. The testimony from Jeffrey McConney yielded an important building block for prosecutors trying to pull back the curtain on what they say was a corporate record cover-up of transactions designed to protect Trump's presidential bid during a pivotal stretch of the race. It focused on a $130,000 payment to Cohen to Daniels and the subsequent reimbursement Cohen had received. So this was him yesterday. Here you can see he looks he does look a bit exhausted. That is for sure. He definitely looks extremely exhausted. There's a lot of enforcement officers around him. Does he really need that much officers? I don't see him getting far, if I'm honest. McConney and another witness testified that the reimbursement checks were drawn from Trump's personal account. Yet, even as jurors witnessed the checks and other documentary evidence, Prosecutors did not enlist testimony on Monday showing that Trump himself had dictated that the payments would be logged as legal expenses, a designation that prosecutors contend was intentionally intentionally. McConnell acknowledged that during cross-examination that Trump would never ask him to log the reimbursement as legal expenses or discuss the matter with him at all. Another witness, Deborah Tanzif, a Trump Organization accounts payable supervisor, said under questioning that she did not give permission to cut checks in question from Trump himself. You have never any reason to believe that President Trump was hiding anything or anything like that, Trump attorney Todd McGannon had asked. Correct, he replied. The testimony followed a stench warning from Judge Jerome Merkin that additional violations of gag order barring Trump from infirmity out of court comments about witnesses, jurors, and others closely connected to the case could result in jail time. The $1,000 fine imposed on Monday marks the second time since the trial began last month that Trump had been sanctioned for violating the gag order. He was fined $9,000 last week, $1,000 for each of the 9 violations, so it was 9, not 10, my apologies. It appears that the $1,000 fines are not serving as a deterrent, and therefore going forward, this court will have to consider a jail sanction. Merchant said before jurors were brought into the courtroom. Trump's statement, the judge added, threatened to interfere with a fair administration of justice and constitute a direct attack on the rule of law. I cannot allow that to continue. Yeah, he has continuously, attacked the judge, attacked the jurors, attacked a lot of people, and it's undermining this whole case, guys. It's undermining it, and it's what's that noise? And it needs to stop. It needs to stop. It's not, he's trying to discredit the system and saying everyone and everything is against him, when clearly that's not what this is. That's not the case here, guys. It really, really is not. It's very frustrating. And Trump sat forward in his seat, glaring at the judge as he was handing down the ruling. When the judge finished speaking, Trump shook his head twice and crossed his arms. Yet even as Merchant warned of jail time in his most pointed direct admonition, also made clear his reservations about a step that he described as a last resort. The last thing I want to do is to put you in jail, Merchant said. You are the former president of the United States and possibly the next president as well. There are many reasons why incarceration is truly a last resort for me. To take that step would be disruptive to these proceedings. The latest violation stems from an April 22nd interview with television channel Real America's Voice, in which Trump criticized the speed at which the jury was picked and claimed without evidence it was stacked with Democrats. Prosecutors are continuing to build towards their star witness, Cohen, who pleaded guilty to federal charges related to the hush money payments. He's expected to undergo a bruising cross-examination from defense attorneys seeking to undermine his credibility with jurors. So that is the story so far, guys, on the Trump case. But there'll be obviously more today by the time you guys see this, and obviously more going along. And it's not going away. Not going away in the next coming weeks. It's obviously going to get more and more intense. I'll obviously try and keep up to date whenever I possibly can. But as for now, I just I think America's in a difficult situation because they have a man here that, yes, the general consensus is that I believe he's guilty as hell for a lot of crimes, but I feel like the laws are going to be bent or broken in such a way because of the influence and the followers that he has, could cause significant and great deal of damage by America if he's allowed to carry on. But whatever happens, America is going to be hurting. Whatever happens in this case and in the other cases that are put for him. And he is desperate to be present again so that he can avoid all these cases. He really, really is. And it's going to be an interesting ride, that is for sure, guys. So we'll try to keep an eye on it as much as we possibly can. So this next one, guys, I already done a short video on this piece, but I wanted to do it here for you guys because I really wanted to talk about, this one here. This one is from Al Jazeera. They've condemned the Israeli government's decision to shut down their local offices. Israeli cabinet voices unanimously to close the network's operations in Israel with immediate effect. So, guys, Al Jazeera's local offices have been shut down in Israel. They've been kind of kicked out. And this is, without a shadow of a doubt, a condemnation of suppressing journalism here in Israel. This is the start. When we've talked about in other videos and whatnot, live streams, I've talked about how people with pro-Palestinian voices are being silenced, or who are speaking the truth about what's happening within the Gaza Strip, are being suppressed or silenced in any way, shape, or form. We know that a former LBC presenter was pretty much pulled from the radio show because of how she expressed what was happening within inside the Gaza Strip. And that, obviously, you had that there. And the reality is that no matter what Israel tries to do, no matter what the West tries to do, no matter how much they try to cover up the dead bodies, the damage, the reputation of trying to shine Israel as like they're still good guys, they're still all right and everything. And when talking about the government specifically, not the people, no matter how much they try to shine this picture in front of the world, and the reality is the people are not seeing that. You know, social media, you cannot control social media. You cannot control the wild west of the internet. People are seeing what's happening within inside the Gaza Strip. They are seeing what the IDF are doing. They're seeing that people are suffering and dying of malnutrition, of water. We are seeing journalists losing their lives within there. Over 70 journalists have lost their lives since that attack on October the 7th as well within inside the Gaza Strip, which is insane. 70 journalists, guys. Yeah? 70 journalists who are simply reporting what they see, but obviously because they're not in favor, because they're not biased towards Israel, their lives are disappearing all of a sudden. And obviously what I'm stressing is allegations here, but to say that so many journalists have lost their lives in this conflict, for the amount of Palestinian lives that have been reported lost, talking about 35,000 of them is, and we're talking about more than 10,000 of women and children who have lost their lives within that Gaza Strip as well, is absolutely abhorrent. And Israel needs to accept its ownership and responsibilities for its actions that it is taking. And this government and its Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, will not do that. And it's outrageous, which is why there is so much anger spewing towards this. And the longer this goes on, the longer that this continues, guys, the more that people will start to vehemently have a hatred towards Jews, which is really, really terrible. Now, I'm not saying... Now, I want to make this very, very clear, because it will turn people's thoughts really nasty against Jewish communities, Jewish people around the world who have absolutely nothing to do with this. And you are creating this division. They are stemming religious division even more than ever before over this. And silencing people's rights, silencing people's rights and silencing a freedom of the press such as Al Jazeera. Are they a perfect new media news organization? No, of course not. They are not perfect, just like any other news organization. I'm not perfect with the content I provide. Sometimes I make mistakes. However, Al Jazeera have always been a very reliable news source, not just obviously in the Middle East, but many other places around the world. They're very good journalists and very good knowledge and source of information of news. And this decision by Israel is a pretty much a straight up saying, we do not want the truth being told in the Gaza Strip. We need to get you out. So when is Middle East and I going to be the next? When are they going to be kicked as well? Because this is outrageous. It's not helpful, and it continues to paint the narrative that Israel is a bad country, that its government are terrible, and that's the narrative that and the conclusion that many people will come to the forefront if you're not willing to accept ownership and responsibilities for your actions and your failures as well. And we can talk about how much we condemn Hamas and the atrocities that they have caused all you want, but you cannot hide the damage that Israel have done within the Gaza Strip, within the West Bank, within its history. They have to take their ownership and responsibility for their past just as much as Hamas and Palestinians have done to Israel as well. But they won't do that. And this is one of the crux of one of the criticisms that many people in the Western world outside of the governments have. So Al Jazeera's media network has condemned the Israeli government's decision to close its operations in Israel as a criminal act and warned that the country's suppression of the free press stands in contravention of international humanitarian law. Al Jazeera's media network strongly condemns and denounces this criminal act that violates human rights and the basic rights to access of information. Al Jazeera reaffirms its right to continue providing news and information to its global audience, the network said in a statement on Sunday. Israel's ongoing suppression of the free press, as seen as an effort to conceal its actions in the Gaza Strip, stands in contravention of international humanitarian law. Israel's direct targeting and killing of journalists, arrests, intimidations and threats will not deter Al Jazeera from its commitments to cover, whilst more than 140 Palestinian journalists have been killed since the beginning of the war on Gaza. The network vehemently rejects the allegations presented by Israel authorities suggesting professional media standards have been violated. It reaffirms its unwavering commitment to the values embodied by its code of ethics, it has said. And by the way, they're making this claim that they have violated their media standards, providing no evidence whatsoever. This is the same Israeli government that claimed that people working for the UNRWA, that's the United Nations, one of the charities that have been really responsible for getting lots of supplies, a lot of helping those within the Gaza Strip. They've accused that organisation of working in with Hamas, and have still yet to provide evidence for it. And their comments of making this, by the way, has also caused the UNRWA to lose funding from other nations such as the United Kingdom, United States, and some other Western allies, which meant there is even less food, less aid coming into the Gaza Strip as a result of their actions from Western nations, and instead relying more on handouts and donations from ordinary people. This is how low the Israeli government are sinking. The statement comes after Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's cabinet voted unanimously to close Al Jazeera's operations in Israel, weeks after Israel's parliament passed a law allowing the temporary closure of foreign broadcasters considered to be a threat to national security during the months-long war in Gaza. It's not a threat to national security. The national security threat is you not accepting your ownership and responsibility for the actions that you and your government are taking. That is the reality. Netanyahu announced the decision on X, formerly Twitter. The government, headed by me, unanimously decided the indictment channel Al Jazeera will be closed in Israel, he posted in Hebrew. Israel's communication minister Samuel Kali wrote on X that he had signed the order against Al Jazeera would be effective immediately. Kari said he ordered the seizure of Al Jazeera's broadcast equipment used to deliver channel consent, including editing and routing equipment, cameras, microphones, servers and laptops, as well as wire transmission equipment and some mobile phones. Later on Sunday, police raided Al Jazeera's premises in occupied East Jerusalem, and satellite cable providers took Al Jazeera off air. Messages have appeared instead of Al Jazeera's broadcast on a number of satellite providers, including messages with the word yes and hot. The message flagged yes reads, in accordance with the government's decision, the Al Jazeera station broadcast has been stopped in Israel. Israel's decision escalates the country's long-running feud against Al Jazeera. It also threatens to heighten tension with Qatar, which funds the media network at a time when Doha is playing a key role in media efforts to halt the war in Gaza. Israel has always had a rocky relationship with Al Jazeera, accusing it of bias against the collaboration with Hamas. The Qatar-based network has repeatedly rejected the accusations. Al Jazeera is one of the few international media outlets to remain in Gaza throughout the war, broadcasting bloody scenes and air attacks in overcrowded hospitals, and accused Israel of massacres. Last month, Netanyahu said it would act immediately to stop Al Jazeera's operations in Israel after its parliament approved a law that grants senior ministers powers to shut down foreign news networks deemed a security risk. Yeah, so now if you are in Israel, if you say anything bad about Israel now, you will get shut down. This is suppression of journalism here. Al Jazeera harmed Israel's security, actively participated in October 7th massacres, and incited against Israeli soldiers, Netanyahu had posted on X. They participated in the October 7th massacre. Do you have any evidence to support this? What an outrageous claim. Claiming that a news organisation was involved in this. Where's the evidence? Do you have evidence to support this? Absolutely outrageous. The network accused Netanyahu of incitement, holding the Israeli leader responsible for the safety of the staff and network presence around the world following its incitement and his false accusation in a disgraceful manner. Al Jazeera's Zam Bahri reported from Ramadan in the occupied West Bank said the Israeli power conflict is one of the main reasons that our network exists. So to have our journalists, our operations threatened in this way, definitely the worry here is the occupied West Bank is that we will be next, he said. Press freedom groups condemn Israel's decision to shut down Al Jazeera. Tim Dawson, Deputy General Secretary of the International Federation of Journalists, told Al Jazeera from London that it is utterly a regrettable and ridiculous decision. Closing down media, closing down television stations, a sort of thing that that despots do. Israel makes much of being a democracy, and the idea that it can simply close down an international broadcaster of considerable reputation and history is atrocious, Dawson added. Noah Dolo, a political analyst, warned that other media organisations could be targeted in the future. People should be concerned, she said. This is not just about Al Jazeera. I think it threatens a lot of organisations. Perhaps a few progressive Israel news organisations have been critical of the war. Yeah, it will not stop there. If others, they will start closing down and suppressing anyone else who starts saying these things. And this is my concern, guys. This is really concerning, to say the least. And like I've said, Al Jazeera, they're not perfect, but they provide a great deal of source of information. They've here on this channel and many others around the world, and they do a wonderful job. They do. Are they perfect? Of course not, like I've said. But this decision by Israel, just for them, this is them. They're afraid of the truth. They're afraid of the truth being told about what's been happening inside the Gaza Strip. And it's not just Al Jazeera, other journalists and other media outlets who are within the Gaza Strip. They see what's going on, and Israel are getting to this point where they want to shut it all down. They want to stop the truth being told about what's happening. They don't want it down because they know the more it keeps coming out, the more it continues to damage their reputation. Obviously, it continues to turn people against Israel and against its government. And it just sends the wrong kind of messages. It's sending the wrong kind of message to Israel. I've always said that the best thing for them to do is take ownership and responsibility for their actions, but they won't do that. They will not take ownership and responsibility for their actions. We know how we feel about Hamas and what they did, but Israel has to hold its hands up in the crimes that it has caused as well. But they clearly don't want to do that. They want to say, no, we're perfect, everything is fine, and if you're critical of Israel and its government, you're anti-Semitic, apparently, because that's the position that you are put in if you're criticized of Israel in any way, shape, or form. I know, it's annoying to say the least, guys. Guys, if you haven't already, please consider hitting the like button and sharing this across social media so others are notified of this video. Really does help support the channel, supports myself, supports the gang here. Oh, what happened to Ollie? He fell off. Ollie, Pingu here is the penguin, and Kashtami there. We have the orb in all its... There we go. I don't like... Oh no, please don't change. Please go back to my... I don't want it being orange because then I won't know... There we go. I won't know if the mic is muted or not unless I look at the dial there. But, yeah, the gang's there in all its glory. But, yeah, hitting the like button, sharing across social media makes a big difference, guys. So if you guys can do that, it would be greatly appreciated. So thank you to everyone who has done that. It's greatly appreciated. Also, just a reminder, members, you do have custom emojis, so feel free to use them as well. So the next one I have here for you is an interesting one here from Vladimir Putin. This is not going to be this will be actually, I think it's 2 pieces on Vladimir Putin, this one, but this one here is from CNN. The headline is Putin orders the tactical nuclear weapons drills in response to Western threats. So there's been an increase in activity, obviously, from the Baltic states when it comes to increasing their security protocols. Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia are becoming more joint bilateral and building up security defenses and whatnot on their borders with Russia because they are fearing an invasion from them, from Russia. Because of obviously because of the conflict that's taking place in Ukraine, and despite the fact they are still part of NATO, they are still concerned about their fear and well-being, and the gearing up of weapons and arms by many European countries to aid Ukraine as well. Now, whether or not this is just a drills and not to take it seriously, I don't know, but you know there is always that possibility of nuclear weapons potentially being involved, and obviously that would mean pretty much the end of the world if that was to happen. And let's hope it doesn't go that far. You know, this conflict, my general consensus is that this conflict will end if Putin was to disappear, shall we say. But The last we've seen him, he seems to be okay, happy and healthy. The last we've seen him on TV, so I don't think it's the case that he may have some health issues that we don't know about, but he certainly doesn't appear to show them. That's for sure, guys. So, the President Vladimir Putin has ordered Russian forces to rehearse deploying tactical nuclear weapons as part of military drills to respond to what he called threats by the West. Since invading Ukraine in 2022, Putin has repeatedly made various threats to use tactical nuclear weapons against the West, but Monday marked the first time Russia has publicly announced drills, so it's entirely possible they may have done some in private. During the exercise, a set of measures will be carried out to practice the issues of preparation and the use of non-strategic nuclear weapons, Russia's defense ministry has said. Non-strategic or tactical nuclear weapons can be used in battlefield situations, carrying less than strategic nuclear weapons, which have the potential to level entire cities. Russia's defense ministry said the drills were ordered after the proactive statements and threats by Western officials against Russia, which Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov has said has reached unprecedented levels. French President Emmanuel Macron last week reaffirmed that he would not rule out sending Western troops to Ukraine, as he warned the risk of Russia poses to European security and other countries near its borders. I'm not ruling anything out because we are facing someone who is not ruling anything out, Macron told the Economics magazine. I have a clear strategic objective. Russia cannot win in Ukraine. If Russia wins in Ukraine, there will be no security in Europe. Who can pretend that Russia will stop there? And during a visit to Ukraine last week, the British Foreign Secretary David Cameron says that Ukraine could use British supply weapons to strike targets inside Russia. In terms of what Ukraine do, in our view, that decision about how to use these weapons, they are defending their country. They were illegally invaded by Putin, and they must take these steps, Cameron told reporters after the United Kingdom pledged to continue their financial and military support for Ukraine. The drills announcement comes shortly after the US last month passed a long-delayed aid package for Kiev, which will allow desperately needed military equipment and ammunition to flow to Ukraine to try to shore up its front lines in the face of renewed Russian onslaught. Russian forces last night made further gains in at least 3 locations along Ukraine's east front as Moscow tries to press home its manpower and ammunition advantage before the bulk of the US aid arrives in Ukraine. Russia has tended to raise the nuclear spectre when its invasion of Ukraine has hit obstacles or when other countries make new pledges to support for Ukraine. After Ukraine liberated last swathes of the territory in late 2022, Putin conceded that this war was going to take a while and warned that the increasing threat of nuclear war. In February last year, Putin announced that Russia would suspend participation of the New START Treaty, a key nuclear arms reduction agreement with the US, the last remaining pact that regulates the world's 2 largest nuclear arsenals. Putin said Russia would not be the first to test nuclear weapons, but would do so in the event of a US test. After Macron said in February that sending Western troops to Ukraine would not be ruled out, Putin warned this really threatens a conflict with the use of nuclear weapons and therefore the destruction of civilization. US President Joe Biden and State Department officials had previously downplayed concerns that Putin could deploy a nuclear weapon, but continued to take the threats seriously. In response to Russia's latest announcement, the US has seen no change in Russia's strategic force posture following Moscow's announcement that it would begin tactical nuclear weapons drills, according to Pentagon spokesperson Major General Patrick Ryder. Ryder said Russia's announcement is completely inappropriate and is an example of the kind of irresponsible rhetoric that we've seen from Russia in the past. In late 2022, the US began preparing rigorously for Russia's potential strike in Ukraine with a tactical nuclear weapon in what would have been the first nuclear attack in the war since the US atomic bombs of Hiroshima and Nagasaki nearly 80 years before, two senior administration officials previously told CNN. In Monday's announcement, Russia's defense ministry said that the military general staff had begun preparations for conducting exercise in the near future of missiles formations of the Southern Military District involving aviation as well as naval forces. So, obviously, I don't think I'll be covering, obviously, the conflicts, particularly in Ukraine, but obviously, just talking about the very threat of potential nuclear weapons. It is a lot of talk. It is nothing, at the moment, as of right now, it's just a lot of regurgitating threats from Russia saying that. But these drills, it's just drills. There's nothing at the moment indicating, let's be clear, the West has spies. They have people inside Russia, obviously, looking at things very closely. And if there's any indication that they're definitely going to be used, I'm sure the West would be informed of some sorts. I generally believe that, guys, if there was. So I would say let's wait and see. Let's not jump to anything at the moment. But obviously, you know, because they have nuclear weapons, we do have our own nuclear weapons here in the UK, but obviously nothing in comparison to America and Russia, and it's still a cause for concern. But we'll obviously have to wait and see. Obviously, you know, Putin obviously is not liking this. Like, this conflict, it needs to stop, guys. It really, really does. It's not good for anyone in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't benefit anybody, guys. So, guys, we're coming up about just at the halfway point here. I've got a funny video for you guys. It's quite it's just over 3.5 minutes long, this one is. So, obviously, if you don't know video games, obviously, so you might not fully get this one, but I hope you guys enjoy this one anyway, because it's a bit of fun, it's a bit of role-playing sort of thing. This one is from Foil Arms. We like to do Foil and Arm funny videos in between when it comes to covering the World Newsrounds. But I hope you guys find this one interesting. I have to have a bit of fun listening to this one too. So the video is called When Your Friends Ruin Dungeons & Dragons. So if you know Dungeons & Dragons, you'll get some of the references. But if not, I'm sure you'll still get a laugh out of this. But I hope you guys enjoy this one.
Now, adventurers, are you ready to begin your journey?
Do we have to dress like that?
No.
So this is Dungeons and Dragons.
This is Dungeons & Dragons, Chris. It's a role-playing fantasy game.
Like a sex thing.
Yeah, exactly. But none of the good bits.
Here are your character sheets, okay?
Oh, what?
They show you your strengths and weaknesses, spells, and what you'll need to
Whoa,
succeed.
Chris the Destroyer.
Aegon the
Nice.
elf?
Yeah.
Why do I get a crap character?
It's not a crap character.
What, charisma 2? How am I charisma 2?
Whoa,
I got Charisma 8.
What? That's ridiculous. How does he get...
You've got loyalty 20.
You're right. Oh, so my character's a lick arse.
Look, they're not you, okay?
Intelligence 2.
Oh, finally. It's accuracy.
That's bullshit.
It's not you.
Where's your character sheet?
I don't have a character sheet.
Okay.
I'm the
I
dungeon
see.
master.
Okay, so you can give it, but you can't take it, yeah?
I'm the dungeon master. I run the games.
I think I should be dungeon master.
You don't know the rules,
I'll
Aegon.
make them up.
Well, there should be a vote.
I have spent weeks creating the story, character arcs, subplots, red herrings, populating the world.
Okay, yeah,
with
you
a
got it. You
love.
really want to be the dungeon master. Go.
You enter a tavern.
Destroy the tavern.
What? What? It's just a tavern. Why do you want to destroy the tavern?
Because I'm Chris the Destroyer. It's in my nature.
You don't even know what the quest is
No,
yet.
I'm with Chris on this one. I think we should destroy the tavern.
Oh, fine, yeah, you destroy the tavern. Yeah, and everyone inside it burns along with their well-thought-out stories and subplots that you could have done. Congratulations.
All right, cool. So if we won, is that
sound like
we
we've won.
finished?
No, you haven't. No, the game isn't over until you finish your quest.
Oh, okay.
Out of nowhere, a weary beggar approaches you. It seems like he has an interesting story to tell.
Attack the beggar.
What?
Attack beggar.
He's just a beggar.
Yeah,
he's just a beggar.
attack him.
He's a story to tell, Aegon.
I don't care.
Look, I mean, he tells you the story. He said, "Oh, weary travelers, your quest, should you choose to accept it, is to find the golden arc of life." Aegon, it's your turn.
All right. Attack Chris the Destroyer. Attack Chris the Destroyer.
What? You're meant to work together.
Yeah, the golden arc of life. I'm not sharing that with anybody else. Use a Flame of Orion on Chris.
Oh, I thought you were supposed to be loyalty 20.
Yeah, well, maybe in real life I'm more like Force.
You are ruining my game. Through a combination of luck, skill, and teamwork, you have survived thus far. To go forward, you must use all your strength, intuition, and skill to overcome the final enemy, the Demogorgon.
Oh.
Before you may approach him, you must first swim through the pit of despair.
No, that's ridiculous. We'll die.
Whoa, spot the courage 2 over here.
No, Chris.
Chris the Destroyer.
No, it's insanity. We don't have the aquasuit.
Oh my, the aquasuit, the aquasuit, the aquasuit.
You have been so reckless ever since we left the Forest of Infinite Catastrophe. It's your fault that we nearly got killed by those hags, and you show no remorse.
Whoa, my fault.
You both approach the pit of despair under the shadow of the Demogorgon.
Oh shit, the match is starting.
What?
But the match. We gotta wrap this up.
Oh, well, we can finish it tomorrow because I can move some things around.
No, it's okay. I have a plan. Chris the Destroyer,
Yes, Aegon the Elf.
do you trust me?
I would die for you.
I need you to give me the sword of Galabrian.
Without hesitation.
The Destroyer hands the elf the sword.
He wields the all-powerful sword in the air
Yes.
and chops off his own head. Right, later, losers.
What?
Whoa! What a quest!
How to get out of this quest? I'll just chop off my own head. There we go. Quest over. It's all done. Oh, that was a fun one. That was a fun one. I hope you guys enjoyed that one. From Foil and Arms YouTube channel. Make sure you check out their stuff, guys. Make sure you check it out on their video. Like, share, and all that stuff on their YouTube channel. They do great stuff, guys. They do great stuff. The video was called "When Your Friends Ruin Dungeons and Dragons." So if you're not a video gamer, maybe you might not get the full references for some of it, but you know, just the role playing kind of stuff is just absolutely hilarious. So, guys, we've got a couple of, still got plenty of stories plenty of news stories to come. But if you haven't, if you haven't already, please consider financially supporting me in any way, shape, or form. Being a YouTube member is one of the ways you can do that. You can do that for as little as 99p. Really does make a big difference here, supporting me and supporting the channel, supporting myself, Ollie, Pingu, and whatnot, the rest of the gang that is here, guys. So any of that kind of stuff really does make a massive difference here. So by being a YouTube member, you get access to custom emojis, which some of those in the premiere will show off right now. Other ways you can financially support me as well. There's a $2.99 membership. By being that, you get early access to my content there as well. So you also, whenever I upload them videos, and that once they're all done, they pretty much pass monetization and whatnot, that you get early access to them as well. So you also get that privilege for being a $2.99 YouTube member as well. Otherwise, you can financially support me is also by joining me on Patreon, which also you can get exclusive content on there as well for a small fee as well. Or you can buy me a coffee as a one-time payment or do a super chat. Those are available if you want to do them. But obviously, one of the better ways to financially support me is either being a Patreon supporter or by being a YouTube member. They really does go a long way. That small 99p, 2.99, those, they may not seem like a lot of money, but it makes a real difference to the work that I do here. So anyone who does that, I want to say massive thank you to everyone who does. It's greatly appreciated. Also, just finally, be sure to check out the Facebook page that I've started as well, where there'll be exclusive content. Be dropping at least 2 videos a week on there. So do feel to check that out. The links for that as well is in the description. Right, let's move on, guys. So the next one here is from France 24. It's 5, isn't it? No, that's not right. Hold on a second. Why is the... There we go. So, yeah, the next one here is from France 24 with the headline of Macron is set to visit China's Xi on trade, Ukraine during a Paris visit. So, Chinese President Xi Jinping on Friday arrived in France on a state visit hosted by Emmanuel Macron when the French leader seeks to warn his counterpart against backing Russia in the conflict over Ukraine. So, obviously, this is a massive deal, obviously, having the president of China there in the country. And obviously, China has a good relationship with Russia, as we know. And obviously, just trying to keep tensions nice and warm between, trying to keep warm relations between them. I don't know how much, if any, can have any influence on China China will have or do. But obviously, they want to try and warm some things over there with regards to what's happening in Ukraine. And obviously, you want to continue establishing a relationship there. The French want to do, and we do want to still have a relationship with China, even if they still have one with Russia. And I do think having diplomacy with some of these nations, even if you don't agree with them, is important because it allows dialogue. Because without any kind of dialogue, you're not going to get anything done. So I don't know how much sway or how much change that Macron will have, given that the clock is kind of ticking on his French presidency. In my opinion. He is losing supporters, but obviously he will not be the French president when it comes around to the next election, which is not going to be for a couple of years anyway. But still, he has time to really make an impact, that is for sure. But let's read what we have to say here. So, Xi arrived for the visit marking 60 years of diplomatic relations between France and China, held from the start of his first trip to Europe since 2019, which will also see him visit Serbia and Hungary. But Xi's choice of France as the sole major European power to visit indicates the relatively warmth in the Sino-French relations since Macron made his own state visit to China in April 2023 and acknowledges the French leader's stature as an EU power broker. So this is obviously, France has kind of filled that gap that Britain used to have within the European Union. France has definitely taken more of a leading role in that. And obviously, visiting Serbia and Hungary will be interesting to see what the Chinese president obviously has since there as well. So one of the leader of the One Communist Party state of more than 1.4 billion people, accompanied by his wife Ping Lingang, was welcomed under the umbrellas of the drizzly Paris Orly Airport by the Prime Minister Gabriel Attal. She is to hold talks in Paris on Monday, including the EU Commissioner Chief Ursula von der Leyen, followed by a state banquet hosted by Macron at the Elysee. So yeah, she's gonna be having we'll have talks with the president of the EU Commissioner Ursula von der Leyen as well. That's going to be interesting as well. Tuesday, we'll see Macron take Xi to the Pyrenees Mountains, to an area he used to visit as a boy, for a day of less public and more intimate talks. In an op-ed for Fingo Daily, Xi said he wanted to work with the international community to find ways to solve the conflict sparked by Russia's invasion in Ukraine, while emphasizing that China was neither a party nor a participant in the conflict. We hope that peace and stability will quickly return to Europe and intend to work with France and the entire international community to find good paths and resolve the crisis, he wrote. A key priority of Macron will be to warn Xi of the dangers of backing Russia, with Western officials concerned Moscow is already using China's machine tools in arms production. Beijing's ties with Moscow have, if anything, warmed after the invasion, and the West wants China, above all, not to supply weapons to China and risk tipping the balance in the conflict. It is in our interest to get China to weigh in on the stability of the international order, said Macron in an interview with The Economics published on Thursday. Macron also said in the same economics interview that Europe must defend its strategic interest in its economic relations with China, accusing Beijing of not responding to the rules of international trade. But he acknowledged in an interview with La Tribu Domoski newspaper that Europeans are not unanimous on the strategic to adopt a certain actors that see China essentially as a market of opportunity while it exports massively to Europe. The French president gladdened Chinese state media to troublesome some EU allies after his 2023 visit by declaring that Europe should not be backed into a blog versus blog standoff between China and the United States, particularly over the democratic self-ruled Taiwan. China views the island as part of its territory and vowed to take it one day by force if necessary. Rights group are urging Macron to bring up human rights in the talks, accusing China of failing to respect the rights of the Uyghur Muslim minority and keeping dozens of journalists behind bars. President Macron should make it clear to Xi Jinping that Beijing crimes against humanity come as consequences for China's relation with France, said Ma Wang, the acting China director at Human Rights Watch. The group said human rights in China have severely deteriorated under Xi's rule. Hundreds of protesters Sunday unfurled a Tibetan flag at a demonstration in Paris, accusing Xi of being a dictator and wanting to see erase a local culture at the Tibet region, an AFP reporter had said. However, analysts are skeptical that Macron will be able to exercise much sway over the Chinese leader, even with the lavish red carpet welcome and a trip to the bracing mountain airs of Col de Tourmet over 2,000 meters above sea level on Tuesday. The two other countries chosen by Xi for his tour, Serbia and Moscow, are seen among most sympathetic to Moscow in Europe. The two core message from Macron will be on Chinese support for Russian military capabilities and Chinese market distorting practices, said Janga Odil, director of the Asia program at the European Council of Foreign Relations. However, both messages are unlikely to have a significant impact on the Chinese behavior. Xi is not on a mission to repair ties because, from his point of view, all is well. Yeah, it's not going to, like, if we're expecting massive changes, I do think that some of the message that Macron will pass on to Xi, Xi will take it on, but whether he will do anything is another matter. But, he will want to keep a good relationship with China. It will be interesting, obviously, to see what kind of relationship President Xi will have with the other two nations of Hungary and with the other two nations he visits as well. Hungary and Serbia. It'll be interesting to see how those visits go as well. But obviously, it's a very big moment, obviously, for France and China, and it'll be interesting to see how things continue to develop. And France does have a very big, powerful voice, and Macron does have a powerful voice. So obviously, hopefully, something will come. But again, we're kind of holding our breaths as well on it. But we'll have to wait and see as time will tell whether it will make any difference or any kind of impact at all, guys. So the next one I've got for you guys is a very concerning one. We're going to Africa for this one, guys. This is from Africa News. We've already just talked early in the video about the freedom of expression and media obviously being silenced in Israel, and this is starting to happen in Nigeria to an extent as well. So the headline is a detention of investigative journalist sparks concern for press freedoms, and this is in Nigeria, guys. So let me just read a bit of this just to get you guys some context. So opposition figures and activists in Nigeria have called for the release of Daniel Oku, a journalist associated with the Foundation for Investigative Journalism. Okoku was detained last Wednesday in Lagos by the Nigerian police. He accused him of violating the national cybercrime laws. Local reports on Sunday say he subsequently transferred to Nigeria's police force, National Cybercrime Force. There's a tweet here from Fasigo Somogo saying, so nobody is in doubt what happened here. The reporter, Malioko, it's an abduction and not an arrest. FG has honoured every single police invitation till date. As of this moment, nobody knows from the newsroom and on our board invited by the police and has ignored it. So it's already calling for his release. According to FIJ, the journalist's arrest is believed to be linked to an investigation piece he authored last November, which scrutinised the actions of a senior government official. The Nigerian police, in a statement, confirmed the detention, saying Daniel Oku is under investigation following a petition against him. The petitioner's identity was not disclosed. Journalism is not a crime. Free Daniel Oku now. Family members, civil societies, and media advocacy groups have been demanding Mr. Oku's immediate release across social media platforms. Nigerian's opposition figure and former Vice President Akidel Akaba denounced the arrest, emphasising the critical role journalists play in upholding transparency within the government. Abductions and detentions from Punch newspapers there. Rights groups and the International labelled the detention as draconian and brought the case to headlines as international communities mark World Press Freedom Day on May the 3rd as well. Amnesty International again calls on Nigerian authorities to release Daniel Oku, who is unlawfully detained, and to stop targeting journalists merely for doing their jobs, and to end the Misuse of Cybercrime Act to silence journalists and critics. Nigeria, Africa's most populous country, is ranked 112th out of 180 countries in the World Press Freedom Index, according to Reporters Without Borders. So as of the time of this recording, nothing really has changed on that. He is still being detained. They've not been very clear about it, but this is once again an act of a journalist literally doing their job, and they've been silenced again. And this is this is one of the most difficult things for journalists to be able to do their job willfully and knowingly without suffering immense consequences for their actions. I really do fear for journalists in the future. It's a difficult job. It's a very dangerous job, especially when you go to countries and especially when there's a change in government, change in politicians who don't like criticism, who don't like them, who are less democratic and more autocracy. And if you go into these countries, and if you say certain things in these countries, you paint a target on your back just for doing your job, just for talking the truth, because that is the whole point of journalists. And it's a very difficult job, and these people are being silenced simply because of doing their jobs and what they are seeing and what they're reporting out there. And it's not good, guys. And I generally hope that nothing happens to him, and I hope that he does get released. But obviously, again, we'll just have to wait and see what happens, guys. It's really a case of freedom of expression being silenced here, guys. So this next one, guys, is quite a long piece, and I wanted to talk about it. So coming up soon, in just a few months' time, is the Venezuelan elections. And obviously, it's supposed to be what we would expect it to be a democratic one. Now, that's very unlikely to be the case with the current president at the moment. The New York Times had a lovely piece here of one of the candidate that's challenging for Venezuela's authoritarian president. So this is from the New York Times. Eduardo Gonzalez, a former diplomat, is unknown to many Venezuelans, but some experts say that could work in his favor as he runs against the president Nicolas Maduro in the national elections. Emmanuel Gonzalez has emerged as a candidate who the government do not seek to block and who the opposition would support. So there's been a lot of, obviously, some of the certain politicians within Venezuela have been silenced, quietened, and Emmanuel Gonzalez has had to be kind of like, has to be kind of a bit careful because obviously it can be a case that he might actually get silenced. But obviously, time will tell whether he will actually be able to actually make the challenge against the current president, Nicolas Maduro, because he's been in power for such a long time as well. Venezuela are really desperate for a change at the top. That is for sure. So let's read into this piece. So the day Emmanuel Gonzalez was plucked from obscurity and chosen to take on South America's longest ruling authoritarian leader, technicians were busy making sure his home was not wiretapped. This was not in our plans, his wife, Mercedes Lopez, said in an interview that day in April in their department in Caracas, the capital of Venezuela. Not long ago, Mr. Gonzalez, 74, was a retired diplomat and grandfather of 4 with no political aspirations. He kept busy writing academic papers, speaking at conferences and taking his grandchildren to haircuts and music lessons. Few in his native Venezuela knew his name. Now, many Venezuelans have placed their hopes in him to end the years of repressive rule as he challenges President Nicolas Maduro, who has held the power since 2013 in elections scheduled for late July. Mr. Gonzalez is suddenly back to having a full-time job. Twice in a day I have to wipe my phone, he says in a brief interview. I delete almost 150 messages. I go to bed at 1 a.m. and by 4 a.m. I'm back on my feet and working again. I never imagined this. After years of rigged elections and political persecution, people in Venezuela yearning for a return to democracy and learned to expect disappointment. A coalition of opposition parties, the Democratic Unity Roundtable, have been working to unite behind a single candidate who could pose a viable challenge to Mr. Maduro. But his government had put up a series of obstacles. In the end, Mr. Gonzalez emerged as a candidate the government would not seek to block, who the opposition would support. He never accepted the role, but his friends and colleagues said he has never prepared for. Emmanuel is not a man who has ever had any political ambitions, said Phil Gonston, a Venezuelan expert for International Crisis Group in Caracas and a friend of Mr. Gonzalez. He's someone who is doing what he sees as his duty. Some experts said his low profile could make it difficult for Mr. Gonzalez to gain traction among voters, particularly outside Caracas, where information comes from government-controlled media that is unlikely to give his campaign much coverage. Mr. Gonzalez, unlike other opposition leaders, has also been openly critical of Maduro's government and its human rights record, which has raised concerns among some analysts who say holding officials accountable for abuses is crucial to restoring the rule of law to the country. At home on the day he made it onto the ballot, Mr. Gonzalez declined to speak at length about the election. The youngest of the 3 siblings, Mr. Gonzalez was born into a family of modest means in the small city of La Victoria, about 50 miles west of Kansas. His mother was a school teacher and his father was a shopkeeper who discouraged him from his childhood dream of being a diplomat, calling it a profession for which people, according to the candidate's daughter, Carolina Gonzalez. Undeterred, he went on to study international relations at the Central University of Venezuela. In college, he was a dedicated student. His classmates and longtime friend Emilis Casillas recalled it was a politically tumultuous time where the far-left ideology was becoming popular in campuses and tensions were high. But Mr. Gonzalez became a student leader with a very calm approach of reconciliations, he said. He wanted to be a diplomat, added. He was very clear about his objections from the very beginning. He joined the Foreign Service not long after he graduated in 1970, with postings in Belgium, El Salvador, and the United States, where he learned a master's degree in international affairs at the American University in Washington. He was later appointed ambassador to Algeria and then to Argentina, where he was posted when Hugo Chavez was elected president in 1999. But Chavez would go on to console power under the banner of the socialist inspired revolution. Mr. Gonzalez returned to Venezuela in 2002 and soon retired from the Foreign Service. In 2008, he became active in a coalition of opposition parties called the Democratic Union Roundtable, advised behind the scenes on the matter of international relations. He became president of the coalition's board of directors in 2021, said Ramadal Argolo Avero, a former executive secretary of the coalition. But most people, even in Venezuela's political circles, did not know he held the role until his presidency and candidacy was announced, because opposition leaders often face persecution. That makes it a risky decision for Mr. Gonzalez to step into a spotlight against an incumbent bent on retaining power. I'm nervous because we don't know if something could happen to us, Ms. Lopez Gonzalez has said. Those who know Mr. Gonzalez says mounting a presidential campaign is not something he would take on lightly. He is an extremely balanced man, calm, quite serious, and above all sober. Ramon John Mulder, who headed the Democratic Unity Roundtable until 2014, and has been a friend of Mr. Gonzalez for decades. Mr. Morado signed an agreement with the opposition leader in October to take steps towards free and fair elections and the United States a temporary lift with some severe economic sanctions as a gesture of goodwill. Days later, the former national lawmaker, Marina Colomachiko, won the primary election with more than 90% of the votes, making her a significant threat to Mr. Morado in a head-to-head matchup. Since then, the Morado government has thrown up roadblocks to prevent a serious challenger from making it onto the ballot. The country's top court disqualified Mr. Macho in January over what the judge claimed were financial irregularities that occurred when she was a national legislator, a common tactic used to keep valuable competitors off the ballot. Then, last month, the government prevented an opposition coalition from being put forward another preferential candidate using technical electoral maneuvers just before the registration deadline. Only one politician, Manuel Rosas, who was seen by political analysis as green-lit by Mr. Morado, was allowed to register. It briefly seemed that the effort to field a unified candidate had been defeated. But, in a surprise, the coalition announced the National Electoral Authority had granted an extension, paving the way for Mr. Gonzalez to officially enter the race. Mr. Rosales stepped aside and threw his support by Mr. Gonzalez. Mr. Gonzalez's career is a consensus seeker, helping him to unite the opposition, Mr. Gonson added. He's someone that is acceptable to a lot of different people, he added, and he just doesn't offend anybody. Those qualities would make it more likely that the Morado government would cede power to him if he was to win, said Tamara Tomlik-Bronca, an expert on Venezuela for the Inter-American Dialogue and Research Organization in Washington. Mr. Morado, experts said, might be willing to concede defeat if he were granted amnesty for human rights abuses and if his party were given a continuing role in the country's political system. On this front, Mr. Gonzalez had been more consolidating than other candidates. Mr. Machiko said that Mr. Morado and members of his administration should be held criminally responsible for corruption and human rights abuses. Mr. Gonzalez said in interviews that he's open to talking with the Morado government to ensure smooth transitions to power. His main challenge is going to be managing the balance between keeping the opposition in line and behind a unified candidacy and making sure this candidacy does not pose an unbearable threat to the regime, Mr. Talis Broker said, and that is a very fine line. One poll already shows him defeating Mr. Morado, though the survey shows that about one-third of respondents said they weren't sure who they would vote for, and that's roughly 20%, and they said they have not voted for any candidate in the race. Mr. Alvarado said he was hopeful that Mr. Gonzalez would win over Venezuelans in the coming weeks. Finally, someone who speaks with sincerity, with modernization, who thinks about the problems and solutions, who speaks without shouting, without insulting, he said, because the country is very tired of conflict. The country has been through a lot. They have had the same person in power for more than 10 years now. They want something different. Now, whether they will or not, it's another thing. I suspect, as much as I would like to see somebody new at the helm of Venezuela, I suspect that this will probably not change things. I think a part of me feels like that Morado is going to hold on, and then it's going to be riots again in the country, and then they're going to be cracked down again by the army. And it's just going to be people are still going to continue to suffer. That's kind of the full process in my mind when I think about this. I really wish Emmanuel Gonzalez the best in his run, and he's saying the right things. He's not like he seems to be saying the right things, but he's keeping a calm and cool head about it all, which I think is a good thing as well. But whether or not he will actually be the next president, considering that they've already silenced other ones, remains to be seen. But we'll have to wait and see, obviously, on that, guys. But I don't think it's one we can take too seriously, if I'm honest. But it's an interesting piece. But as I said, it's not until July, so there's still some time, obviously, to see what things happen between then and now, obviously. So, guys, I got one more piece for you guys before we wrap things up here, and this one is from Middle East and I. Like I said, this one does tie into Putin and Russia, but this is about the Sudan war. So the headline is Russia hedges bet by aiding both sides in the conflict here with regards to the Sudan war. Moscow is striking a series of deals with the Sudanese armed forces while the Wagner group continues to support the Rapid Support Forces. So what is this all about? So I know that the Wagner Group has always had links to the Rapid Support Forces, but Moscow striking a series of deals to detonate armed forces raises a lot of eyebrows to me, as in what's going on here. So what is Russia in now? Obviously, influence, resources within the country are clearly the things Russia's interested in. But let's read more into this story. So Russia is moving to develop and secure its strategic interests in Sudan, offering the Sudanese armed forces weapons while continuing to help supply the SAF's enemies, the Rapid Support Forces, paramilitary through the Wagner Group. Analysts told Middle East tonight that Russia is acting to fill a power vacuum left by the US and to counter Ukraine's military presence in Sudan. There are between 100 and 300 Ukrainian troops on the ground operating mostly at night alongside the SAF. At the same time, sources in the Central African Republic armed opposition told MEE that Wagner, the Russian military group, was still operating there, facilitating the supply arms from the United Arab Emirates to the Rapid Support Forces. The sources say they had captured Wagner fighters in the Central African Republic as recently as last week. Russia has maintained relations with both the RSF and the army since before Sudan's war started on April the 15th last year. And now, over a year old, the war has left tens of thousands of people dead and displaced 8 million more, becoming the world's largest humanitarian catastrophe. In the weeks before it began, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov visited Khartoum, where he held separate meetings with Army Chief Adel Al-Fain al-Burdan and the RSF leader Mohammed Abdel Dalo, the former Jawahiri commander known as Hemli. Multiple sources have confirmed that Wagner's operatives have been involved in the supply of weapons from the UAE to the RSF throughout the war, though Sudan's army-aligned government has said publicly that this is no longer the case. Now, there's been lots of accusations, and the UAE have verbally denied that they are supplying weapons to the RSF. But this is also one of the reasons, when we covered this last week, why the UK are not being as friendly as they used to be with the UAE because of this, apparently, as well. The Wagner Group has claimed that it is no longer operating inside Sudan, but a diplomatic source and eyewitnesses in Khartoum and Darfur has said there are still Russian mercenaries there. There are signs, though, that Russia are now focusing more on its relationship with Putin and the army's aligned government. Speaking in Arabic at the Port Sudan on April the 28th, Russia's Deputy Foreign Minister Mikhail Bogov was clear that the army controls sovereign council of Sudan that truly represents the Sudanese people. The Russian minister, who led a delegation that includes military officers, met with Bodum in the Red Sea city, where the army-controlled government is operating. Hailing the rich experience Russia and Sudan had together in the mining projects, Bodum said that his visit could lead to increased cooperation and expressed support for the existing legitimacy of the country represented by the Sovereignty Council. Malik Ava, Vice President of the Sovereignty Council, held the deeply rooted history and cooperation between various fields between the two countries and stressed that the need to strengthen cooperation and joint coordination between Sudan and Russia in international platforms, especially the United Nations. And this is this is where I have for a long time been kicking and screaming why is not being something done when it comes to ensuring some kind of peace talks here. And that now, the more I think about it, the more it comes to fruition that Russia are literally filling a gap here that Western nations and others are not doing when it comes to finding a solution to this crisis here in Sudan. Russia are taking advantage of this opportunity, and this is what happens when you leave a void, because someone is going to fill that void. Bogolov's visit did not come out of the blue. According to two armies aligned officials who spoke to Middle East tonight on the condition of autonomously, Sudanese intelligence chief Ahmed Mafel was in Russia meeting with his counterparts a week before Boldov, who is also Russian President Vladimir Putin's special representative for the Middle East and Africa, arrived in Sudan. Earlier in April, the sources said Russia's ambassador to Sudan, Anthony Chogol, had approached Bolton's offering to supply the SAF with weapons. The Sudan Tribune reported that during discussions between Bolov's delegation and the army-aligned officials, the Russians offered the SAF unrestricted quantitative military aid. This offer could involve specialized expertise and potentially a Russian presence in Sudan. On the 4th of May, a Russian-registered transport plane had landed in Port Sudan from Dubai. The Akabin al-Alistin 76MD had made multiple trips from Dubai to Akku in Kazakhstan in the days leading up to the Port Sudan flight, according to data from the Flight Tracker 24. At the beginning of April, Russia expects exporting diesel to Sudan, with 2 fuel tankers, Palo Rock and Convert, delivering a total of about 70,000 metric tons of diesel to Port Sudan on the 2nd of April and the 5th of April, according to the LSEG data. Another oil tanker, the Marbaria Sun, is currently anchored at Port Sudan, according to Marine Traffic website. Russia has been scrambling to find new markets for its refined products since the full EU embargo was imposed at it on February last year. Russian companies have long-standing interest in Sudan, particularly in gold mining, with Western diplomats in Khartoum previously saying that the Wagner Group has worked with the Daigo family to ship out gold out to Darfur. Hemley and his own family own a gold mining company that operates on land he seized in Darfur in Western Sudan in 2017. He has talked openly about not being the first man to own gold mines, but that provided him and the RSF with a key source of power and wealth. Speaking to Middle East and Eye in April last year, a US official based in North Africa said an estimated 32.7 tons of gold was smuggled out of Sudan on 16 charter flights with an estimated value of $1.9 billion between February 2022 and February 2023. The cargo was sometimes flown to Russia-controlled air bases in Syria and always labelled as cookies, the official said. It was used by Moscow to help keep its economy afloat in the wake of the war in Ukraine. In Port Sudan, according to 2 army-aligned sources, the Russian delegation also discussed Ukraine's military presence in Sudan and the prospect of Russia's naval base on the Red Sea coast, which was first agreed upon during the days of autocrat Omar al-Bashir. Russia hopes to establish a naval base on Sudan's Red Sea coastline close to Port Sudan. In February 2023, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov told a press conference in Khartoum that an agreement for this to happen has been signed earlier between the 2 countries and is only waiting to be legalized. Russia sees opportunities elsewhere. The US is operating. Cameron Holston, a former CIA analyst and fellow at the CSIS Africa program, told MEE. And remember, they haven't given up on their ambition for a Red Sea port. I think everything they are doing in Sudan is for service of that objective. Gerald Hososhi, an associate fellow at the Royal United Service Institute of Defence and Security Studies, the RUSI, described Bollo's visit as a significant event. Russia has had a long-term agreement regarding Port Sudan, a strategic asset that Bolton's General Hemby had never had the chance of capturing, Hammadi told MEE. Thus far, Russia has backed Hemley, but is also very much aware of Hemley's current difficulties, especially considering Iran's growing support for Bolton this year. This gives Moscow a golden opportunity the Russians may very well leverage to decrease in military aid to Hemley's rapid support forces in exchange for a comprehensive deal with Putin, Horati said. Russia is by no means married to the UAE, which is doubling down on Hemley right now. So there's a lot of power play, obviously, you can see taking place here over the 2 sides, which have backings and not backings from different sorts here. Middle East and Eye has reported extensively on the routes used by the UAE to keep the RSF supplied. Those routes remain intact, and the US reluctantly allude for the first time in public, having spoken to Emery officials about their support for the paramilitary. We do know that both sides are receiving support, both with weapons and others to support to fuel their efforts to continue to destroy Sudan. And yes, we have engaged with parties on that, including our colleagues from the UAE. Linda Thomas Greenfield, the US ambassador to the United Nations, said on April the 29th. According to Al-Shaki, a US security delegation arrived in Port Sudan on Sunday to hold a round of joint discussions with the army-aligned state officials. Sources close to the Sudanese armies told MEE that ceasefire talks brokered between the US and Saudi Arabia are scheduled to begin in the Saudi Arabian port city of Jihad on the 15th of May. Details of Iranian support for the Sudanese armed forces have emerged in the last couple of months, according to the Africa credentials. Iranian drones, notably for the Mahar 4, Mahar 6 and Abu have been operating since January from the SAF's Wadi Salah Air Force Base. That's north of Khartoum. Kalu Kali, a Sudanese analyst and founder of the Confluence Advisory, agreed that Russia was countering Ukraine and filling a vacuum left by the US. Russia, the UAE, and Israel play both sides. Don't pick favours, Kala said. The time in it is because the Ukrainians were not there not so long ago about the policy that has always been the same, which is that the Kremlin backs Putin and the Wagner groups, which is an arm, of course, of Russian foreign policy, backs the RSF, she told MEE. That way they have a horse in the race no matter how this shakes out. Yeah, so a lot of hands, a lot of sides are being played without a shadow of a doubt when it comes to this, you guys. Russia have had a relationship with Sudan always had a relationship to them, but we obviously didn't know how extensive that was. Obviously, Middle East and I have kind of opened up our eyes on that, and they're playing a lot of mind games and a lot of psychology here, playing with other nations as well here. You know, Ukraine is involved in this as well. The US not so much now. Iran, UAE, there's a lot of nations involved in all of this as well. But for me, the main crux, the gripe that I have with what's happening here is that everybody's kind of happy for this war to keep going, that people to continue to suffer as a result of it, and you know, because of all the weapons and supplies, you know, the weapons that's made out of it, and somebody wants those resources. Everyone wants those resources that Sudan has. That's for sure in this. And if Russia was to get that naval port, they'll give them great deal of influence in Sudan. That is for sure, guys. It will be that way for sure. But how are you guys feeling about this? Ollie is hopeful that one day there will be peace in Sudan, and I hope so too, because so many lives have been lost, so many people's homes and livelihoods have been destroyed in Sudan. So, well, we hope that one will come to fruition. And Pingu is optimistic as well, but lots more obviously to keep an eye on. That is for sure, guys. So, guys, we reached the end of the World's News Round. What did you guys make of some of the stories that we covered today? We talked about the latest updates on the Trump case. We talked about Al Jazeera being thrown out of Israel, Putin ordering drills for nuclear weapons publicly as well. We also had Macron having talks with with President Xi in the state visit there. Nigerian journalists in Nigeria being silenced, talking about Venezuela's potential opposition leader or potentially future president there. And obviously this conflict in Sudan and with regards to the links to Russia. What do you guys make of all these stories? Let me know your thoughts and more about them all in the comments section down below. But just before you go, guys, if you can, just do one more thing for me. If you haven't already, please hit the like button. We greatly appreciate it. Share it across social media so others are notified of this video. And subscribe, because it really does help support the channel. And if you want to go one step further, financially support me and the work that I do here, you can do so by becoming a YouTube member for as little as 99p, or join me on Rumble or Patreon for exclusive content there as well. So thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to catch you all very, very soon.